Well, folks, you'll have to excuse me. You can see that we're kind of caught in a purple haze here, a purple fog. What's really going on here? Well, the propaganda is underway, and that's to be expected. At big conferences like this, people will say grand things that have very little substance to them. And here we see it at the G20, specifically the B20, the business gathering that's taking place in South Africa. South Africa's B20 Sherpa, or leader, Cass Kuvadia, was on stage with the United States' incoming B20 Sherpa, Gary Littman, at the Sandton Convention Center. Adrian Basson reported on this. Now, Littman is the Senior Vice President of Global Initiatives at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and it's the largest business organization in the world. Not a business, but an organization that advocates for business. Littman is taking over from Cass Kuvadia as Sherpa of the B20 that's going to be hosted next year in the United States. Adrian Basson says a top United States business leader and Sherpa of the B20 in 2026, Gary Littman, has heaped praise on the ambition, sophistication, and knowledge of the South African business sector. Ambition. To abandon the rule of law, abrogate property rights. How exactly is business to flourish when appointed government officials at municipal, provincial, and national level can steal property with no compensation? No business can flourish in that environment. Now, speaking of the B20 summit in Sandton, while U.S. President Trump is boycotting the weekend's G20 summit, Littman said the United States was grateful to learn from South Africa. To learn from South Africa? We're grateful to learn from South Africa. Where exactly has Mr. Littman gone in South Africa? What does he actually know about the country? Is he aware of the crumbling infrastructure, the 145 racial laws that limit who can participate in business, the open, blatant discrimination against white South Africans for educational opportunities? Now, naturally, he's taken a position intended to curry favor with South African business. But when he finds out that any foreign direct investment, which he directs from the U.S. business community to the shores of Cloud Cuckoo Land, will be diluted when they're forced to give over 30% of their equity to someone because they have a preferential skin pigmentation, that gratitude will quickly turn into incredulity. He continued, the sophistication, level of ambition, knowledge of South African business community is incredible. The distinction between global North and global South is no longer that important. Actually, it is. Yeah. Well, no doubt many in the business community in South Africa are sophisticated and knowledgeable. I mean, that's a natural consequence of overcoming pervasive state failure in electricity delivery, public safety, infrastructure, labor policies, abysmal work ethic, patronage networks, and exclusion from 50% of the formal economy controlled by the state, with racist government legislation reserving that for people with the right skin pigmentation. Naturally, South African business leaders are sophisticated. They would have to be just to stay in business and survive the pervasive racism, bigotry, and state control of the economy. Now, Littman's taking over the baton of the B20 Sherpa from his South African colleague, business luminary Cass Kuvadia. Kuvadia was at pains to emphasize the common aims and ambitions of nations and continents, in stark contrast to Trump's protectionist policies and views. At pains? What, chest pains? Is Cass Kuvadia lying or simply woefully ignorant? Common aims and ambitions? The common aims of many nations around the globe is to rob America and transfer its wealth to failed states that cannot manage their own affairs. This is accomplished through protectionist trade barriers, intellectual property theft, copyright infringement, trademark theft, demands for deadbeats to get yet another round of debt relief, and the cultish religion of climate change as a cudgel to transfer wealth to political elites in the developing world. If these are the common aims of countries, we want no part of it. And as far as Trump's protectionist policies, poppycock. Trump's tariffs are not protectionist. They're a tool to right a badly listing ship in which most countries, in clear violation of World Trade Organization rules, block American products and services while gaining easy access to the world's largest consumer market, the United States of America. Let's take South Africa, for instance, where the African National Congress applied 75% tariffs on U.S. poultry exports to protect their failing poultry industry. They banned the importation of U.S. pork products altogether and placed strict quotas on the number of American-made automobiles allowed into South Africa. So who has protectionist policies, South Africa or Trump? When countries lower their barriers, Trump lowers tariffs. The United Kingdom, Switzerland, the European Union, South Korea, Japan, all have lower tariffs that match the barriers to U.S. products. But they had high tariffs because they were unfair to the U.S. Au contraire, Mr. Littman and Mr. Kuvadia, Trump is not playing the protectionism game. He's eviscerating it and no longer letting Americans be taken for suckers around the globe. Kuvadia says South African companies have global ambitions. We're all committed to the same thing, accelerating real economic growth for our countries. That's simply not true. Your government is committed to racial oppression and pushing people down, not growth in the economy. How can you sit there with a straight face as a South African business leader when your economy is growing at 0.5%? Less than inflation, less than population growth, and far less than the 8.5% that your economy needs on an extended basis, now 15 years at least, just to catch up with pervasive poverty that's caused by the ANC and its policies for the last 30 years. Policies that have tripled the number of black people living in abject poverty from 10 million to over 30 million. Now, yes, some South African companies do have ambition, and they do want to accelerate growth, but the economy is hobbled by parastatals that lack ambition, are incompetent, and or corrupt. When apartheid ended, the profitable state-owned airline South African Airways should have spread its wings across Africa and become the premier airline on the continent. Instead, the patronage puppy has been an albatross around the neck of taxpayers with over 90 billion rand in endless bailouts and near liquidation. Meanwhile, Brussels Airways has gained big market share across West Africa, Kenya Airways in East and Southern Africa, Ethiopian in East Africa, and Turkish Airways all over the continent. They're now the leading airline in Africa. Kavadia says, we share the same ideas and approach. The G20 has come the full circle. We've learned a lot. It's been a tremendous experience. We do not share the same ideas. While the U.S. is seeking to grow the global economy, too many of the G20 are seeking to carve out a share for themselves rather than grow things. What we have learned is that most of the world espouses free trade and then erects barriers. Lippmann said it was the role of bodies like the B20 to make political leaders understand why they need to allow companies to achieve their business goals. We are doing this together. Business leaders share goals. I've learned a lot, and we'll keep working together. Excellent. Start your mission right now at Nasrec in Joburg. Tell President Ramaphosa that the 145 racist laws must be abolished, that the parastatals should be privatized, and that trade barriers should be removed if South Africa is to excel. Otherwise, you're just another convenient fool tricked by the glitz, glam, and grift of South Africa's handlers. Now, Cass Kuvadia made the case for the world to place Africa at the center stage of development. He highlighted the continent's youthful population, mineral richness, and positive contribution to the climate. No, Africa is not center stage for development. Africa is center stage for underdevelopment and has been for decades, in spite of hundreds of billions of dollars poured into development from the West. As far as the youthful population, that's less of an asset than it is a largely poorly educated and restful cohort. Positive contribution to the climate? Are we now cloud seeding across Africa to improve the climate? Or what about the devastating deforestation taking place all over Africa to burn trees for cooking and heat, raising ambient temperatures and causing massive numbers, millions of respiratory illnesses per year and deaths? Folks, this is all just nonsense from disconnected rich elites who have little concept of how the world really works outside their privileged bubbles. But this was to be expected. The purple haze, the purple fog, coming from the talking heads at the G20. Whether the U.S. was there or not, this was going to happen. And this is the main reason why the U.S. is not there. It's not really about extermination. Extermination. Sound like the Daleks, President Trump. No, it's not about that. It's about goals and ambitions from the global South to rob the global North of its wealth, which they seem to think is fair because they want to claim that the global North has robbed their wealth. But that wealth didn't exist. The wealth was created from resources that came from all over the world, including global South, by intelligent, bright, sophisticated people in the global North and in countries like Japan and South Korea who built the modern economy, the modern world, modern technology. While the global South wants to fleece that without adding anything to the pie. Well, there you go. What more would you expect from the G20? It's an unwieldy body that has little value in today's world. The G7 was large enough, and that's where it should have stopped. These issues are issues for the UN General Assembly or regional trade bodies, not the G20. Cheers.